Hi, everybody. Just like to introduce you to, we're laughing already, introduce you to a new educational podcast by myself, Paul, Tom, and Jamie. It's sponsored by Hector. And this podcast is just going to be an educational chat show. Sometimes looking at more specific things about bringing education or technology to education and bridging that gap. So yeah, let's just get started. Paul, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name's Paul. I'm science and technology lead for a referral unit in Leicester. Sole aim for me is to bridge that gap, as James said, but bridge the gap where to remove the boundaries and the fears that IT presents to some teachers, and then to be able to reduce workload, make lessons easier, and ultimately more interesting for the children.
Sweet. Jamie?
Yeah, I work at a inner city school in Leicester. My name's Jamie, and I'm the computing lead at that school. I have a real passion for bringing children up with an aspiration to learn more about computing in specific, but also to have them equipped with the skills when they go on in later life and they start to do different jobs and they start to do different things. And I think what's really important to me is that I can begin to equip teachers and equip educational professionals with the skills that they need, not only to be confident leading children and teaching them about important skills to do with education and technology, but also to have the confidence to use them themselves. Because I think there's a plethora of different things out there that people probably don't know about. And I think it's really important that we start bringing these up to people and start really introducing these ideas so that people can really make a difference. And no matter who you are, what background you're from, technology can help you and support you.
Great. Tom?
So I'm Tom. I'm a computer engineer, network manager for a special needs school in Leicestershire. So my job is basically to make sure that everything works, also help teachers with all the lovely kit that they get to help with certain medical conditions and things like that. So communication aids or Big Mac switches down sensory rooms. It's really my job to sort of make sure that when it doesn't work, it does work. If they can't make it work, then I can make it work. Basically, that's what I'm there for. So yes, that's me basically.
Brilliant. And I'm James, just IT guy for Hector, who are proudly sponsoring us. And again, the reason that I work for Hector and work in IT and IT in schools is trying to bring that love back to technology within the educational department. I'm going to get a complete ribbon by everybody for that. But yeah,
Here you are.
How I feel about it. Here we go. So,
even from us.
This first podcast has no direction. We really just want to start having a chat and see what comes from it. When this eventually goes out, then we're hoping sort of content builds from the people who watch it, really, and we can start being more specific on what you guys want to hear about. But today, before this started on record, I heard Jamie talking about some Google Classroom stuff. I heard Paul talking about some 3D printer stuff that's gone into their environments, and I thought, right, let's just stop talking about that and let's start recording it and using it as copy. So, yeah, do you want to give me your Paul? Do you want to give me your breakdown about your 3D printer experience?
I think we rented a 3D Ultimaker printer. And we rented it for a period of 6 weeks. I went on the training in November and we took delivery in March, by which time I'd forgotten all the training. So a bit of a baptism of fire, but picked it up very quickly. And the interesting thing was that our children are really difficult to engage. They've all been excluded from mainstream schools, but I could hold a class for up to 2 hours with the 3D printer because you're using what they want. New technology. It's a similar build using the Tinkercad. It's similar to what they use on Minecraft. So they've got an insight into how to build things and, just click and drag or basic stuff. Because the kids got over that initial, well, they didn't have the fear of the teachers. The teachers then got engaged on the back of the children rather than it being the other way around. And that broke down a lot of initial barriers. Within hours, we'd gone from designing things on Tinkercad to loading them up to the 3D printer. And by the end of the day or the next day, if we ran it overnight, children have got tangible objects to take home, be it just their name or an elephant or whatever it was. And it was just, to me, watching the teachers saying, oh, actually, yeah, we can do this, rather than the initial resistance I got at the beginning. That, to me, was a real success. And I think we're now going to buy one. It's been that much of a success.
Nice.
Yeah, we've decided to buy one.
Is there another subject, like, I'm not completely just going to go, IT is great, but is there another subject where, from that short sample size, that the kid gets so enthused?
Is there another?
It's like sort of a geography lesson or a history lesson or something. Where
the joy with the Tinkercad programs is it comes with, not Tinkercad, the Ultimaker comes with a whole host of lesson plans, and they are driven through the national curriculum. Okay. So we're doing living things in their habitats in science at the minute. So you could, if you wanted, create an underwater scene, and build into that. If we're looking at microhabitats, we were looking at producing a woodlouse. We never actually got time in the end to do it, but we're going to do it next. But obviously, a woodlouse that's this big, not fingernail size. So you get all that detail.
I suppose you can build it in elements as well, and then I guess those elements plug together and make you woodlouse.
And you can do it as a group. So you can do it either as an individual person just doing your own little design, or you can have people coming in, much like we're on the podcast now, but you can have people coming in bringing all their different things into the room, which is brilliant for getting those connections and communication going. Yeah, but that's too big for mine. You need to move it down, and you need to do this. And it just worked remarkably well, considering it was a first introduction.
That's perfect. See, that might be eventually like a podcast on its own. You can bring in some of the samples, or we can, if there is that interest out there, we can kind of do some demos on that, which is brilliant.
Yeah. I think the 3D printing is, anything like that is the way forward. When you've got NASA talking about 3D printing moon pods, it has to start somewhere.
No, I think the thing that I really liked was the initial, because obviously I work with you as a setting, but the enthusiasm and sort of interest that you had straight off the bat. Now I know that you're from that sort of background anyway, but that infectious interest in that 3D printer started rubbing off on everybody. But what I always see is if you can get, well, the children are just naturally interested in technology anyway.
Yeah.
The key was, and if the staff are seeing the interest from those children, and they've got that resource of you as that champion for that piece of tech, then it gets absorbed into the schools anyway.
It does, and that initial, I wouldn't say it was resistance, but there was that initial fear factor when we had the 3D printer from teachers that are not necessarily as IT literate as we probably are. It was really interesting to see that they could actually see, oh yeah, I could build that into my lessons. And the children are teaching themselves. You've not got to sit and do hours of planning. The work is marking itself effectively.
Yeah, and that's why, taking someone like, give you some praise, Tom, here. So prepare yourself. But looking at some of
first time for everything.
It's rare. It's rare, Tom. So take it.
The screen now.
But Tom, since I've been working with Tom has a real interest in supporting teachers on a personal level. So it's not just a case of showing them how to use the tech, but understanding from their point of view of the challenges that they're going to face. So breaking down that fear factor and being receptive to overcoming those challenges and offering that extra layer of support moving forward. So that's where having that champion in the school, because not every school has a technician like that or an engineer like that, then having that champion in the school breaks down those
I think
barriers.
it makes a huge difference if staff have got someone to turn to and say, how do I do this? But not on the end of a phone or waiting for somebody to come in, somebody that can just turn to and say, how would do this? And even if we can't do it, we can just turn around and say, I'll find out for you.
Yeah. Well,
I think that makes a massive difference.
Yeah, well, that kind of leads us into Jamie having a little say, because Jamie delivers all the IT curriculum at his school, and
I don't know if that's a blessing or a curse, but
yeah,
maybe both.
Yeah, but there's pros and cons, isn't there, for both models?
Well,
and
yeah,
that can be something we talk about as we move forward.
And I think what we've spoken about already almost this evening is that it's part of the thing is that I think we always remember that we're teaching the kids, and part of the curriculum is to educate the children about computing and IT and the dangers that are associated to that. But I always forget that even I'm not by any stretch an old, or I'm early 20s, and I think back to when I was in primary school, which isn't in reality that long ago.
Oh, you just keep dropping it. Here we go.
My IT education when I was in primary school was non-existent, and then I think how difficult it must be for some teachers, some adults that probably have never really thought or had to start developing skills to use technology. And I know, James, you gave me a really interesting fact the other week when we met up about 66.7% of jobs are now STEM jobs, which is science, technology, engineering, and you think it's such an important skill. And it's such an important thing to be able to do that not only do we start to, I think, encourage people and start telling them about our stories and what we've done, but also encourage them to say it's not as difficult as it seems. There's a mountain of resources available, and I've used a bit of Tinkercad. Obviously, we don't have a 3D printer. I'm very jealous. But there's so many resources out there to really support adults and children and anybody to really learn more about technology.
Brilliant. Oh, I've found from my experiences that with technology, 6 months, everything you've learned is obsolete. So pretty much, so they haven't got somebody coming in fresh off the bat and inexperienced with tech. They're on to a loser. So whenever I try and work with a school, giving them a starting point. So take something like Code.org. I did some stuff with Jamie's school, and I try and do some training with them, give them a passive resource that they can continue to go back to give them that starting point. And once schools have, or teachers have that solid foundational knowledge of that, where to begin their journey, they tend to fly from there. And it is something like Code.org, amazing resource. But there's so much there, and you don't even know where to start. And you're like,
it's the initial step, isn't it? It's taking it first.
So I always show Dance Party on Code.org because I think it's awesome. I was like, have a look at Dance Party, and then it's hooked. But
right, I'm not doing that.
No.
Or the dancing or the coding.
Either.
Can you not dance while you code? That'd be really cool.
Introduction chats.
No, there's a story about me dancing, but not for this podcast.
Yeah, it's pre 9 o'clock.
Family entertainment.
Yeah.
So, Tom, your challenges are going to be, I imagine, slightly different.
Yeah. So from our point of view, it's trying to vary. So the school mostly takes a very wide variety of students with lots of different needs. So we'll have maybe a couple that, Paul, you probably have to relate to, as well as kids with profound learning difficulties. And for us, it's trying to balance a curriculum where you've got, one extreme to the other, and from there, certainly year groups becomes an interesting one, because it's never really based on, you know, how old a student is. It's more about their that particular ability, and obviously their learning difficulties will implement or have a significant effect on what their understanding is. So some things that you guys might class as primary school aged, some of the students at our school will be still using that in, you know, year 11, because they can't past those basic fundamentals, and it's a case of trying with different ways just to get them you know, a bit further along and things. So the real difficulty is it's the, you know, it's that range of items in the curriculum. So, you know, whereas you might be able to sit down, Jamie, in your class and do, we're all going to do Scratch today, with your, you know, year sixes. Some of our year sixes, yeah, they'll get that fine, and other of our year sixes, it's beyond them. So it's about making sure that we've got a variety of different things. And actually, it's quite interesting when you come to like the IT curriculum. The teachers are a big fan of not necessarily, you know, things that aren't necessarily in IT, but it's understanding those basics of coding, and, you know, and it's those kind of things as well that I see them use a lot of, which is quite ingenious, as well, as whether it being technology. But yeah, it is trying to find that variety of different devices to do things.
And I think it doesn't have to be massively technological either. We've just introduced talk to text.
Yeah.
In class, where I've got 2 in my class that will not write. You cannot get them to put one of these to paper, but have got a lot of great ideas, and it's really opened up English. Just that simple, you know, introduction of talk to text. So
one of the reasons that we looked at Google, quite a few years ago, was the talk to text, and for a lot of our students, like, you know, they use Dragon. Oh, not if you can say brand names, but a certain text reading program which costs an arm and a leg to use. Well, I know. So if you all know which one I'm referring to, and it was prohibitively expensive, you know, because it had to be dedicated, it had to be this, it had to be that. And the good thing with Google was you could give them a Chromebook, you know, it didn't even have to be their own one, but they could just get on with it. And like you say, Paul, they've got plenty of ideas, plenty of great stories, but they refused to write them down with a pen.
Yeah.
Because they just couldn't do it in their mind. It was just beyond them. But yeah, got some great storytelling abilities. I mean, I was fortunate enough that one of the students that we trialed it with, we just let them run with it, and I got to read the story that they wrote, and it was very impressive, you know. And like I say, this is a person that can't write, you know, or rather, it refuses to write rather than can't write. And, you know, great ideas, great little story. And me and the head teacher were both like, well, it's amazing, isn't it? You know, we'd have never got that piece of work out of this person if they hadn't been given that.
And certainly in mainstream schools, that they don't have the TAs and the assistants in class to support one-to-one learning, and this is a support for one-to-one learning. You don't need a TA alongside. In minutes they learn how to access it, and a few minutes later they're producing work, and it's something tangible. They can actually see what they've produced, and again, seeing that impact on the other teachers in the school. You know, it's all again down towards breaking barriers and making life easier.
Yeah, no, I work in a mainstream school, as I've mentioned, and I think my main challenge is sometimes it's the perception of children's ability. And I think technology is such a great way for children to really break down those barriers. They're really able to start developing and showing people that actually, okay, maybe I can't grab a pencil, I can't use those fine motor skills that you want me to, but then I've got such a vivid imagination. I can really be really creative. And if we look at the different strands of the computing curriculum, it's to create, manipulate, to process, to move, to do things with technology. And you think, well, hang on a minute, this child who's apparently completely can't do anything is actually able to make a website, because they're clicking and they're moving and they're using different features, and they're using like dictation software. I know James has briefly mentioned about code.org, and one of the amazing things that I liked about code.org and its integration with Google is that even I've got quite a lot of children in my setting that are EAL, which means English as an additional language, and the computer actually being able to read out what it's saying on the screen to the child slowly, and they can play it as many times as they want to help them understand. And I think in a mainstream school, I know I quite often don't have the time to repeat the same instruction to a child 4, 5, 6, 7 times in a lesson, because I'm constricted to a 45-minute period before they go out to pee and come back in smelling like goodness knows what. But I think those little things that maybe teachers aren't aware of, because I can hold my hands up and say sometimes we don't always have time to go and look for these things and go and really like go and delve deep into it and go, oh, okay, I'm teaching a science lesson. Oh, let's spend 3 hours roaming Google looking for a 3D demo of an ear. Like, nobody's got the time to do that. But if we can start to, as part of this podcast, start to give people ideas on different things they can use and really like start sharing stories of things that can be used, maybe not in ways that they quite often think. This might really open up some ideas and really open up some really amazing work to be developed by children in different settings.
Perfect. I mean, I don't want this first introduction to go on forever, but I think it's a good intro of what we're going to bring in bring to the podcast. I think we'll have a chat, guys, before the next one, and perhaps have a bit more of a specialism and talk about, I don't know, the Google infrastructure within education, and or 3D printing or something, and be a bit more specialised about what we're going to do. But I think that was a good first intro of pretty much what we're going to talk about, or ramble about.
So it just proves that we can all ramble, doesn't it? So,
Nice.
I mean, James has got a degree in that, but
yeah.
See, just to let everybody know that I'm going to be battered from pillar to post for everybody, because I guess I just have that face. Is that what it is?
It's a face of radio.
Nice. Thank you. Cheers. I appreciate it. I appreciate it, Tom.
Yes, absolutely. It's what I'm here for.
All right. Well, I will rewatch this back and see if Tom did say anything that shouldn't be said. So, and then I will talk to Jamie and we'll get this out. So, good first podcast, guys. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And see you later, everyone.
Yeah. See ya.
Ta-ra.
Bye.